things are just a shit show lately, and people are cynical all around. And I think the fact that someone like Trump could win is evidence of that. I mean, so I think we should have no hesitancy about being proudly socialist, anti-capitalist. I think people are hungry for that kind of radical critique. Yeah, we're going on 40 years of neoliberalism, which is just hollowing out this country. And, our piss poor response to COVID, I think, is a pretty clear indicator of that.
Yeah, I heard a podcaster recently refer to it as like when an earthquake comes, you see which buildings are up to code, right? Mm-hmm. And what COVID exposed, it wasn't like
country is not up to code.
Exactly. It's not like, oh, well, everything was fine, but we had this crisis that messed it up. It's like, no, you had it backwards. Like this shit was all really shaky beforehand, and this is exposing it.
There's other places who have handled this pandemic so much better than us. And
while we're talking about how it was handled, I got to say, big shout out to the state of West Virginia, which has the best vaccine rollout in the country and is the only state in the union that did not farm out its vaccine rollout plan to CVS and Walgreens. And they are all the better for it.
What are your thoughts on the vaccine rollout in Iowa, David?
So the vaccine rollout in the Midwest in general is not great. The information campaign is just not there. We never shut down in the Midwest. One of the only COVID laws that we passed in Iowa was that you can get drinks to go now from the bar. So you can walk in and get a Bloody Mary to go. I'm not shitting you. This was Kim Reynolds' solution for keeping bars open. It wasn't providing any kind of real financial security or support. It was you can get your beer to go. And a lot of our advertisement that we're seeing, whether it's in South Dakota or Iowa, is around, of course, they're saying mask up, but they're saying that it's a personal responsibility. They're putting the onus on to each individual. A lot of that advertising to kind of, I don't know if it's make themselves feel good or absolve themselves from the guilt of everyone dying here, but that should be used for getting out information about where you can go to get your vaccine, when your vaccine will be available to you, how you will know when you qualify for that vaccine. That kind of information, I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but it's not being rolled out in the way that is acceptable or helpful to the majority of Midwesterners.
I'm sure there's some wonks somewhere in government who are strategizing about a website where all this information will be available that will just be ignored or not known about, or it wouldn't be accessible to large majorities of people over 40.
Exactly. A lot of Iowans don't have internet. I had to pay $3,000 to get internet out to my place just for them to connect a line 1,100 feet from the gravel road where they just happened to be running internet down. Wow. A lot of folks don't have internet. And before I got that, I was out here on the farm for 4 years with no cell service and no internet service. It was great.
Yeah, well, I could see that as being welcome in some ways. But I mean, I'm sure there's some like liberal wonk somewhere who is like, I don't know, contriving some kind of solution. Oh, we can have an online marketplace where people can shop for their vaccine and find the best price for their vaccine, and they can choose for all.
That worked for Obamacare, didn't it?
Yeah, they can choose from all these plans, and it'll be so great for people who enjoy spending their free time comparing the finer points of different health insurance plans, like I do.
Buy this, or you're going to get fined, right? It's a tax, and you have to pay it, and you'll get fined if you don't. Well, how about you just get me Medicare for all, since insurance pools get cheaper as they get larger, and that's the largest possible insurance pool you could have. What are we doing, like futzing around, help this private organization, and then blaming people for not participating instead of just doing what's right by them?
Folks don't realize that we have more in common than they want us to acknowledge. What is it? It's 80% of Democrats support Medicare for all. More than 50, is it maybe 60% of Republicans support Medicare for all?
Yeah, the polling like fluctuates a bit, but it's around those numbers. Yeah.
Right. So I think that the one thing that we can definitely pull from this crisis is that there needs to be a new base standard for healthcare in the United States. That's something that we all agree on, the general populace agrees on. Why doesn't Congress agree on that? I think that's the question that we really need to start asking. Why are they not standing for the will of their constituents? Because their constituents overwhelmingly support it.
Yeah. I think it becomes a form of effectively rationing, whether it's a healthcare marketplace or, I mean, whatever government service it is, applying for unemployment and, the paperwork and information you have to gather and the whole process of everything. It becomes an
Totally.
effective form of rationing because there are people who just aren't going to have the time to do it, or they just, I mean, people have stressful lives as it is, and you're throwing more quote unquote choice and more responsibility on them. People would just welcome, and the polling shows it, they would just welcome having the healthcare there when they need it, when they go to the doctor.
You're dead on about that, John. I mean, there's I have to find the article and send you a link or something. But like Australia is quote unquote streamlining many different sort of social services, welfare state services through an online portal that is pissing everyone off, is not working as well as it should, has a lot of hoops to jump through, etc. And what I read about it was that basically this is their way of rationing it without rationing it. Like, oh, we'll have this new system. Well, this new system is a piece of shit and it's way harder to use. That means less people are going to get through it. That is the actual point of it that they can't say.
Yeah. Well, this organization you're working with, David, United Today, Stronger Tomorrow, they're working in a few different states. Is that right? How can people find information about them if they're curious about helping put the pressure on Congress, on their local officials, having more support for people at the local level for a COVID-19 response? What would you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So the region that I'm working, like I said, is South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska. Over in Colorado, we have an organizer, Olivia, a great organizer. She is working with the AFL of Colorado to organize there. We're also working in Indiana, and we're working with a number of other groups like CVH, Podunk Resistance. So to find the information on how to get involved, you'd want to go to unitedtoday.org. And go ahead and take our COVID response survey. You can take that and it'll ask you some questions to kind of help us gauge what the most prevalent impacts due to COVID-19 are in your community. Some of the major ones that we've identified so far, especially in the Midwest anyways, is mental, emotional, and physical health are some of people's largest concerns, along with childcare. Unemployment is lower on the list because we never shut down. Unemployment is a problem, but it is not the problem. So that's some information that we're learning with this experimenting in this project. But yeah, go to unitedtoday.org and you can sign up to get involved. We're in a number of states and we are working on securing funding right now to open up in a couple other states. Ohio's been thrown around there. Montana's been thrown around there. Just places where this kind of organizing is just not going on. I mean, there is organizational structures there, but the kind of investment of having a dedicated organizer there is just not existent. So that's what we're trying to do is go out and change the places we think can be changed and do the good work. It's up to us. Like I said, we're the ones that we've been waiting for. I know a lot of people are tired after this election cycle. Unfortunately, as organizers, we don't get the luxury of respite. We don't get the luxury of being able to take a break. The train's rolling and we've got a lot of fighting to do and we need your help.
As Rosa Luxemburg said, history is the only true teacher. And it's by fighting that we learn to fight. So I think there are a lot of people who see themselves as having some kind of radical politics. And there's a lot to be desired from different kinds of activism establishments out there. I mean, obviously grievances to be had with political structures. I mean, at all levels at this point. But, I think what we got to do is take these skills that we learn where we can learn them. And then move forward from there, try to raise consciousness and try to spark within people radical critique and a sense that things can and should be better, and build from there.
Absolutely. We need to not write off these young leftists that are 17, 18, 19-year-olds, 15-year-olds coming into the process. They are the future and cannot disregard that next generation the same way that our parents did to us. And that means joining TikTok, and that means making content to educate these kids. A lot of them are getting into and reading theory, but they don't have the apparatuses to learn about organizing. They don't have the connections and the networking to get into organizing. And that's where our job is, to bridge those connections. Theory is cool, but getting your boots dirty is way cooler.
Yeah, I think it's useful to have both. And that theory gives you a sense of confidence in what you're fighting for. The fact that other people have faced these kinds of problems before and thought about them and reflected on them and offered us some wisdom. Because people should have no reservations, I think, about expecting a better world, demanding it, and working for it. and not being cowed by anyone who tells you otherwise. People deserve comfortable lives, and they deserve all the things that we can offer to people just by virtue of being human beings. And that's what we got to fight for. I want you to have the last word, David, or maybe I'll just edit it so you have the last word.
Oh, well, I can. How about I end it with a Eugene Debs quote? How's that sound?
Yeah, I love it.
All right. So my favorite one that I've got it written on a sticky note on my computer screen in the other room right now. But he said, "For too long, the workers of the world have waited for some Moses to lead them out of bondage. I would not lead you out if I could, because if you could be let out, it means you could be led right back in again. I would have you realize that there is nothing that you cannot do for yourselves."
I like it. Go read Eugene Debs, everyone. Read some theory, read some Marxism, and then let's get to work.